The Weather Channel is saying I got a possibility of it raining on Saturday, about a 50% chance. And then I got another maybe 3 chances of it raining throughout the week. So I'm taking a look at it to figure out when am I going to take these calves to the market. I got 5 calves that are ready to go. And the thing is when I liquidate these animals and I have the money in my hand, I would like to reinvest that capital as quickly as possible, okay? Cash does not do anything. This is the thing about cash, is that cash does not do anything. And the whole idea about cash is that if you have a good investment, you don't even need money. You don't need cash. If you have good investments, cash just becomes kind of whatever, okay? You're better off financially, from a broader just financial understanding. You are better off with a good investment than you are cash, okay? There is no crystal ball. There is no nobody has a crystal ball. I don't have a crystal ball. There is no way to tell what is going to happen in terms of a definitive statement, okay? There is no way to tell unless we talk about broader generalities like the direction of the market. There are only 3 ways that the market can go. It can go up, down, or sideways. Like if we talk about that, then sure, in terms of an exact idea, there's no way to tell, right? I mean, like, how do we know that, in 20 years there's not going to be an atomic bomb that goes off? I mean, nobody knows, right? How do we know in 10 years, there's not going to be some major financial collapse and or there's going to be some major financial problem and the Federal Reserve is going to print trillions of dollars? How do we know that that's not going to happen? Nobody knows, right? How do we know that for the next 20 years, maybe everything just goes okay, right? Maybe everything just goes okay for the next 20 years and we get 2-3% inflation a year for the next 20 years. I mean, who's to say that, nobody knows for sure, okay? And that includes me. There is no way to know. And that's also why I discuss fundamental ideas more so than exactly what should happen. Because nobody knows. If anybody tells you that they know, if anybody claims that they know what is going to happen, they don't know. They're an idiot, okay? Nobody knows, okay? And so this is also why I discuss fundamental ideas more so than anything else. Because fundamental ideas like don't leverage yourself to the eyeballs, okay? If you're spending every dollar that you have, if you are budgeting to spend every dollar that you have, that is just from a fundamental standpoint, that is not a good idea, okay? A good investment is better than cash. That's a fundamental idea. What makes a good investment a good investment? You thoroughly understand what you are investing in. That's what makes a good investment a good investment. And the whole idea yesterday, if you're going to bet against me, I wouldn't do that. All right. There are a lot. And my whole thing about that is, like, instead of betting against me, why don't you go and bet on yourself? Why don't you go and look to just do better, right? Why not? Why would, because the whole thing is, like, if you bet against me, number one, you're wrong, okay? If anything legitimately goes, like, not okay, okay? If anything happens that causes any kind of a major problem in my business and whatever, right? I mean, if anything happens that whatever causes things to change, I will tell you. I will say something has happened and things are now different. My whole thing about how I invest capital, right? My whole thing about how I invest capital is that there is a way, there is a reason why I invest the money the way that I do. There's a reason for it. Why do I hold stabilized assets? Why do I not liquidate all of my animals at the same time? Why do I not dump all my money into the market at the same time? There are reasons for these things, right? And let's talk about this from a a legitimate standpoint. Let's talk about this. Actually, let's talk about this from a theoretical standpoint. Let's say that Farmer Howard has 40 animals. Let's say that Farmer Howard has 40 animals, and he has divided up these animals. Well, I mean, but the thing is that I have more animals on the front end of the herd now than on the back end, right? Here in about 6 months, I'll be liquidating about 10 calves a month instead of 5. And so actually, let's just turn this into a theoretical situation. Let's say that Farmer Howard has 35 cattle, and he has evenly distributed these animals from a 200 to an 800 pound range. He has 5 animals that are 200 pounds, 5 animals that are 300 pounds, 5 animals that are 400 pounds, 5 that are 500, 5 that are 600, 5 that are 700, and 5 that are 800. And he is looking to liquidate his 800 pound animals. When he liquidates his 800 pound animals, he reasonably anticipates that he will make enough money to buy 10 200 pound animals. Why would Farmer Howard set up his business like this? Right? I mean, why did I set up the business the way that I did? And it's also important to understand that when it comes to this stuff, like when money talks, all right? Like if we take a look at how much money do I legitimately make, it is a lot of money. I'm not talking about a lot of money like in a global sense. I'm not talking about a lot of money in a global sense, but I am talking about a lot of money in terms of I legitimately make enough money to not worry about money ever again. Why would I do something that causes me to be in a financially difficult situation? And a lot of you are putting yourselves in a financially difficult situation all the time. I call that, and it's not just financially, but you are putting yourself in a hard spot all the time. And I call that kicking yourself in the dick. You might be buying yourself a new truck. You might be going on a magical journey. You might be whatever, dumping all your money into the market at the same time. And the whole thing about like learning is that, and I stress this a lot, right? I spend a lot of time just reading. I spend a lot of time reading. My whole thing about information is that whatever it is that you are looking to do, somebody has already probably done it. All right. And the good thing about one of the most amazing things about living in the world today is that we live in a world where you have access to effectively the world's information in your pocket all the time. You can get on the internet and read for free. You can. Okay? You can get on the internet right now and just read. Read whatever you want. You can read all day if you want to. And I discussed, where do I read my information? Where do I read the most information at? Like, where do I do most of my reading at? On Google Scholar. Okay? And I talk about this all the time. Like, if you are putting on 1.5 pounds a day and you want to learn how to put on 2 pounds a day, and you could legitimately do this instantaneously and it wouldn't cost you any money, how could you do that? You could go on the internet and just find a diet that has been well studied, that is putting on 2 pounds a day, that is putting on 2.5 pounds a day. All right? You can just go on the internet and find a diet right now, okay? And just copy and paste it. I even give you examples of the diet that I use when I feed my animals. But it's also important to understand that if you're in a situation where you are mixing your feed for your animals all the time, you're probably not going to be able to make very much money at all. And think about it like this. Let's say that you went and an 800 pound feeder cattle were selling for $3,000. And let's say that you got a good price and you paid $2,300 for 500 pound animals, okay? Let's say that you paid $2,300 for a 500 pound animal, and you reasonably anticipated that you could sell this animal at 800 pounds for $3,000. So this animal, let's say that, and then let's say that when you sell your animal, the sale barn takes a 3.5% commission. Out of $3,000, that is $150, right? Or that's $100. Excuse me, not $150, $100. And so you had a $700 margin and you lost $100 to the commission, so that's $600, right? And let's say that instead of feeding your animals grass, you are having your animals on a commodity feed stuff. And if you're feeding an animal from 500 pounds up to 800 pounds, you are probably going to be spending about $75 a month per animal, okay? And even if you are not buying a flat out commodity feed stuff, you will need equipment to mix the feed stuffs to give to your animals, okay? You will need to buy the feed, etc., etc., if you're not growing the grass yourself. If you're not growing the grass yourself, you'll have to get the feed somehow, right? And so let's say you're paying $75 a month to feed your animals, right? And so you got $75 a month per animal. So that's you're already down to 525, right? So now you're down to 525. Let's say that you lose 5% of your animals, okay? 7% is actually the industry standard. Like if we're going to take the industry average, 7% death loss is the industry average. So let's just say 7%. So 7%, and let's say that you are running you're running 200 cattle a year. So if you're running 200 cattle a year, and you can make $700 per animal, that's $140,000 that you originally start off with that you can make. Let's say that you lose 7% of your animals. So that's the industry standard. So 7% of 200 would be 14. So 14 times 2,300, you lost that right out the gate, okay? You lost those animals. So that's about what's 14 times 2,300? That's about $28,000, right? $29,000, something like that. So 20, let's just say 30 grand just to make things easy, and then we'll get rid of the cost of the gasoline for your truck or the diesel or the hauling or whatever. So let's say 30 grand, right? So you lost 30 grand, so now you're at 110. You lose 3.5% to commission, and that's $100 an animal. At 200 animals, that's 20 grand. So now you're at 90. And then let's say that you're feeding your animals for 3 months to get them from 500 pounds to 800 pounds. And, you got 200 animals. So you got 200 times 75 times 3. What is that? 200 times 75 would be like 20 something thousand, right? And then you multiply that by 3, right? If you got 200 animals and you're raising them for 3 months to get them from 500 to 800 pounds, and it costs you $75 a month per animal. And now you can see why now you're effectively in a situation, and then you add in the possibility. Let's just say, well, okay, but let's just think about this in terms of if the market just goes sideways, okay? If the market just goes sideways. So if the market goes, and now when you take a look at the numbers, you can see very quickly why there is no money, right? Like you're not making any money. Most people end up in this situation. Like if you pencil out the numbers, you will figure out very quickly, and it's not just farming. I don't know how else to, discuss this idea other than to say this is not just farming. A majority of people, it doesn't matter what sector of the economy you are looking at, a majority of people barely make enough money to get by, or barely, or actually a majority of people barely make enough money to get by or lose money. And losing money slowly over a long period of time is the worst possible financial outcome that you can have. The worst. And there is kind of like this, this sense of a cosmic dilemma in terms of encouraging people to fail. If you're in a situation where you want other people to fail, then you're a twat. You should turn your life around. Why not bet on yourself? Why would you waste your time? Because like if you bet against me, chances are you're going to sit there and you're going to watch your bet. Oh my God, I hope my bet is right. Oh my God, I hope my bet is right. And then you will just waste all of your time. You're not, and if you put money on it, you will lose money. Why not go and bet on yourself? Why not? Why not look to just improve your situation? But when you crunch the numbers, and this is not just for farmers, this is effectively everybody. Almost everybody is in a situation where they lose money or barely make enough to get by. And if we talk about, let's just talk about the cattle business, because the cattle business is something that I thoroughly understand. I actually make money, a drastic sum of money in the cattle business. When it comes to making money in the cattle business, I make a lot of money. All right. I make more money as a cattleman than anybody in the economy makes pretty much doing anything on the entire planet. Just about. All right. So let's talk about this in terms of the cattle business. You buy your animals at $2,300. You run 200 cattle a year. You sell them for $3,000. When you sell them, you pay a 3.5% commission. You raise your animals for 3 months. And you put your animals on commodity feed, okay? So this commodity feed even right now will cost you about $75 a month for you to feed a 500-pound animal up to 800 pounds, okay? So let's say that well, let's just boil it down to one animal, okay? Let's say that if you paid $2,300 per animal, and you had a 5% loss. What's 5% of 2,300? It's about 100. It's about like whatever. Let's just say 100 and whatever, $20 or something. So you got your $700 margin. You subtract 100 for the commission. That puts you at 600. You subtract 120 for the for the death loss. So now you're at 480, and then you subtract 75 times 3. Now you're sitting on about 200, right? And then let's say that you give your animal $25 worth of medication, and there are other expenses of $50. And so what would that be? That would be 700 minus 100, 600 minus 125 would be 475, minus 200 would be 275, and then minus 75 for other expenses would be $200, right? It'd be $200, So if things went very well for you, I'm not going to say very well. If things just went okay, if the market went sideways and you ran your 200 cattle a year and you made $200 an animal, congratulations, you made 40 grand. What do you want? Do you want a cookie? Right? What are you going to do with that? You ran 200 cattle a year for $40,000, right? Do you want a cookie, right? And let's say that you have some equipment, and let's say that you have equipment, and let's say that you need to pay it's like, what are you gonna do with 40 grand, right? And this is also what I mean by this is what happens to a majority of people. All right, this is what happens to a majority of people. Either that or you start losing money. If you're net positive 40 grand, you're very close to losing money. And when I talk about this stuff, I'm not being funny about it. I'm not getting amusement out of it. All right? I'm just saying that this is where a majority of the world is. You're either very close to losing money, or you are losing money. And if you lose money over a long period of time, that is worse than going bankrupt immediately. And the whole idea of like if we start bailing out everybody who is failing, if we start just handing out money to everybody who is not doing well, that is encouraging people to fail. That will cause people to fail over a long period of time, when they should have just failed today and got on with their life. Don't kill yourself. I'm being completely serious about this. A lot of people end up in this situation. I have legitimately seen people who bankrupt when they're 70, and it's not funny. It's not amusing. It's not good, okay? You don't want to bankrupt when you're 70, all right? I've seen people bankrupt when they're 70. Legitimately shut down their business, bankrupt, and then now they're at a cashier at a grocery store. I've seen it happen a lot, all right? And a majority of people end up in this situation. You barely make enough money to get by, or you're losing money. When I take a look at my business, and I put a lot of emphasis on this idea, the idea of growing grass and learning about the feedstuffs, right? What are the metrics that I use when I determine the quality of the feed, and how do I, determine, if my animals are getting a good quality feed or not? I use energy, TDN, protein. You can also, another way, another thing that you can think about is the total units of protein that your animal is ingesting on a daily basis, and the total units of energy as well. Okay, if your animals are eating, 3.25% of their body weight a day, let's say that your animals weigh 600 pounds on the average, and they're eating 3.25 pounds, 3.25% of their body weight a day. They're eating about 20 pounds, right? And if they're eating 20 pounds of, if they're eating 20 pounds of feed a day, and they're eating a 14% protein diet, then you can determine how many units of protein they are eating on a daily basis as well. Okay. And so, but energy and protein, TDN and protein. Okay. But the whole thing about this stuff is, like, when I talk about this stuff, I'm not looking to make it confusing, and it's not confusing. But if I simplify it too much, it's borderline misinformation. You have to develop an understanding of how this stuff works. And I've always said that, like, if you're learning to do something, you should not bet the farm on it, okay? What they call betting the farm. Don't ever bet your farm, okay? You don't ever want to be in a situation where you are betting the farm on anything. All right? There is no reason to bet the farm on anything, okay? You don't want to be in a situation where you are betting the farm, okay? The whole idea of don't bet the farm, okay? Do not bet the farm. That's another fundamental thing. All right, what I call leveraging yourself to the eyeballs. Don't bet the farm, stuff like that. You don't want to be in a situation where you are betting the farm. You don't want to be in a situation where you are leveraging yourself to the eyeballs. Learning how to do something new does not cost a lot of money. All right, if you went and I've spoken of, the whole idea of, like, if I had nothing, even if all I had was $500, well, with $500, what could I realistically do with $500, right? Well, I could grow 5 acres of hay. I could go and put gas in my truck, go to the commodity yard and pick up a half a tonnage of fertilizer, and grow 5 acres of hay. And when I grow the 5 acres of hay, I can legitimately grow enough grass to feed 15 500-pound cattle to a near commercial standard. I put a little bit of grain in them. I feed a little bit of grain, and I leave them on that grass. 5 acres of good grass will feed 15 500-pound animals, no problem, right? And I supplement them with a little bit of grain. And if I do that, and I take my 500-pound animal, I mean, what's that going to cost me? That's not going to cost me hardly anything. All right, if I have a $700 margin and I have them on grass, I have them on good grass. You cannot just say your animal's on grass and then you put them out on some worthless, where your grass is not going to do anything for your animal. If I take a look at your grass, I could tell you within 30 seconds what the feed values of your grass are. And if your grass is not good enough to put at least 2 pounds a day on your animal, then your animal will severely underperform. All right, if your grass is good enough to put at least 2 pounds a day on your animal, and you supplement that with a little bit of grain, you can actually turn your grain into a positive return investment, and it's tax deductible. All right, But grass, growing grass is where, when I get in the cattle business, I'm not really in the cattle business. I'm in the grass growing business. If I did not have the grass, I would not make this amount of money. It would effectively not be possible. Okay? It would effectively not be possible for me to make this amount of money if I did not grow grass. Because here's the thing. For me to grow enough grass to feed 50 cattle with urea at about $650 a ton, for me to grow enough grass to feed 50 500-pound cattle to 800 pounds, for me to do this, it costs about $400 a month. It costs less than $10 an animal. Maybe about $10 an animal, okay? It cost me about $10 an animal. If I did not have the grass, I could not make the money. I'm just telling you, I'm being completely honest about it. I am giving you the flat out, just it is what it is. If I did not have this grass, if I did not know how to grow grass like this, if I did not learn how to grow grass like this, I could not have made it. It would not have been possible. And the thing about growing grass is that it is so cheap. Even though it is very difficult to do it, at least it's very cheap. Growing grass is very complicated. There is no way to make it easy. If there was a way to make it easy, everybody would have already done it. All right? There is no easy way to do it. Soil is different everywhere that you go. Some soils are higher in nitrogen, some soils are higher in phosphorus, some soils are higher in potassium, some soils are looser than other soils. Some soils, like, the chemical components of soil are different. And if you do not understand that, just think about it. Like, if you were next to a volcano, let's say that you were next to a volcano, the soil there would be different than if you were next to a beach. If you are in the middle of Central Texas, the soil here will be different than the soil in Antarctica. If you are in the middle of the Amazon forest, the soil will be different than if you're in the middle of the Sahara, right? Everywhere that you go, the soil is different. And if you do not, if you do not understand how to, take a look at biomass material, if you do not know how to objectively determine the mineral concentrations of your soil to somewhat of a degree, if you do not know how to do that, then you will ultimately fail. At some point, you will cause some kind of a mineral imbalance in your soil, and your biomass accumulation will suffer horrendously, and the feed values of your grass will be very low. All right? If there was an easy way to do it, everybody would already be doing it. And I put a lot, and I stress this a lot. Growing grass if I told you that it was easy, I would be lying to you. And lying to you is not going to help anybody. Lying about it is not going to help anybody. Growing grass is very complicated, and it's very difficult. There's no way around it. You are going to have to work on it for a long time. All right? And if you mess it up, your results will suck. And if you suck, your life will be hard. The end. There is no way. Oh my God, maybe if I just made it easier for other people to understand. There is no easy way to do it. If there was an easy way to do it, everybody would already be doing it. If you mess it up, you will fail. If you suck, your life will be hard. All right? This is not a joke. There is no Disneyland journey. Everybody does not succeed. When it comes to biomass accumulation and when it comes to plant material, your plant material needs to have enough, and I will say it again. I'm not going to go into the biomass material and observing plant material for mineral concentrations today. I'm not going to do that again. Growing grass is very cheap. This is the big benefit. Growing grass is very cheap. Even if you messed it up for 5 years in a row, which you probably won't. Okay, even if you do it somewhat correctly, you should get some kind of a biomass accumulation. The biomass accumulation should be somewhat decent. And you can harvest your grass by putting your cattle on it, okay? After you've grown the grass, you can put your cattle on it, okay? And then, the whole thing is just keep working on getting better. Even if you failed the first 2 years, don't give up. That's the moral of the story. It is difficult, and chances are you were not born with the answer, and you're going to have to learn how to do it throughout your life. All right? Even if you messed it up for the first 2 years, and let's say that you were practicing on 5 acres of land, which you shouldn't be completely messing it up, okay? You should not be completely messing it up. But even if you did, you would have lost whatever, $1,000. You would have lost whatever, $800. What does it matter? You would have lost $400 a year. You would have lost $500 a year. What does it matter? It's more important that you keep trying, that you don't quit, and especially that you don't start going off in the wrong direction. That's more important. If you try a couple of times and you failed and your results suck and you get your panties in a wad and then you start going off in the wrong direction, that's not good. If you lost $1,000 over 2 years, what does it matter? At least you're learning something. All right? At least you're learning something. And it's going to be difficult. There is no Disneyland journey. There is no easy way to do this. And if you don't learn how to do it, if you suck, your life will be hard. Have fun. All right? Life is not a Disneyland journey. Life is not a magical adventure. If you suck, your life will be hard. All right? And you can effectively learn how to do anything on the internet nowadays for free. You can read about whatever you want, and you can go out and practice on your own. And when you're practicing and learning how to do something, it's not even going to cost you any money. Hardly anything, all right?